when I was trying to introduce myself to everybody, they were like, but wait, are you on or off campus? And I kind of am one of those people, I was afraid if I left Brattleboro, I would never come back. And never do my capstone. I would be one of those 5-year students who at the very last minute was in a rush, you know. I'd be one of those 1064, 65s you guys are seeing in the library every day who are frantically trying to remember what they did 5 years ago and write a paper about it. So I didn't want to do that. So I decided to stay here and kind of refine some of my skills in monitoring and evaluation, which is the kind of the niche in development management that I chose to work in. So before I came here and did monitoring and evaluation with the Graduate Institute, I worked with Peace Corps in Belize, and I, with the program, did M&E for them. And then I also, as a consultant with organizations in Belize outside of Peace Corps, worked and did M&E work. So most of my experience is in international development, monitoring, and evaluation. But before that, I was a teacher, and teachers by nature do a lot of assessment. We are taught constantly how to assess and evaluate students and programs, and so I kind of came back here to the Graduate Institute where in a much more structured environment I got to kind of practice some of these skills. So today I'm just going to talk to you guys about these things, kind of what monitoring and evaluation is, the difference between monitoring and evaluation. That's really important when you're writing a proposal, that you differentiate between the two. How you kind of tie monitoring and evaluation into your entire project proposal, the different types of M&E, how it relates to your project cycle, and how you actually write out a plan. And then I'll talk to you guys about how I do it here, so that it's kind of as an example or as a case study. So this is a lot of stuff on one slide, but I just wanted to kind of differentiate between the two. So we'll start with evaluation, because that's kind of what most people are the most interested in when they think about evaluation. Did this project have an impact? That's what they want to know. Did it have the effect that we wanted? Did the people who got trained, did they actually know what we wanted them to know? So that's the evaluation. So the most common definition is the collection and analysis of information to assess the impact of the organization's work. A really well, commonly accepted one is from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. All these acronyms get kind of meshed together, but they have one that a lot of people subscribe to, and it's the process of determining the worth, significance of an activity, policy, or program. So they say you can evaluate any of those things. And for you all, you're talking about programs and projects. So that's kind of evaluation. When we talk about evaluation, you'll hear two different types of evaluation a lot: formative and summative. So how many of you have ever been teachers? So maybe you heard all the time talking about formative assessment and summative assessment. If you think about it in terms of a classroom, which I'm confident that we've all experienced that before since we're all in a classroom right now, formative assessment would be the midterm, or the formative evaluation. That would be when your professor says, okay, it's 6 weeks into the class, I want to test how much knowledge they have acquired until this point. And they do it, they look at the grades, they say, okay, I see that we're a little weak here, we're pretty good here, here's what I'm going to do to kind of make up for anything that I missed, and then they keep teaching. And then the summative assessment is when they give a final exam over everything in the class, including what they originally give you in midterm. So that's the difference between formative and summative. I like to think of formative as like, it's the stuff that's forming what you're hoping is going to end up being, what you want in totality. So all of this is completely different than monitoring. And monitoring is often just completely left to the wayside. Monitoring is when you're tracking the implementation of the project. So for that, that's just tracking the cost, the personnel, the time, your resources. You're tracking how you're using your inputs. You're tracking that you're getting the right amount of outputs. So those are the two things you're tracking. And we'll talk more about this, but just kind of an overview. So in evaluation, you're actually making a judgment. You're actually making an assessment. And then in monitoring, you're just tracking. There's not enough data to actually make an assessment with monitoring. Okay, any questions about that? All right, so we'll talk more with more examples. So you're probably like, okay, we're doing something exciting. We're writing a project proposal for, I don't know, what kind of plans are you guys working with here? What's your group writing a project about?
Human-mediated therapy.
Okay. What's another group doing?
Farm, S.I.T. Farm, is a statewide agriculture initiative.
Okay, and then what are you all? I guess you guys, are you all a group too? What do you all do? The farm? Okay, so 2 groups are doing the farm? Or
I think you're going to project.
Okay, so you guys are all saying, we're really excited about the implementation. You guys are the people that want to get in there, and you want to work on the farm, you want to do the therapy, you want to do these things. That's really good, because we need those people who actually want to work with people and help them. We don't all need people like me who are more about the backside. We actually need people who want to work on the farm, right? So, and that's exciting to write a project about those things. But it's really important when you're writing your proposal to include monitoring and evaluation for these reasons. You can say, we want to train teachers how to teach kids how to read. That is what we want to do. And I've done a lot of that in my life, training teachers. But I've been doing that for years, and I have never one single time stopped to check to make sure any of those teachers know how to teach, then I don't know that I've been successful. And what is the point of continuing to do it unless I know? So that is the main purpose of evaluation. Also, when you do monitoring and evaluation, you improve the management style. So for instance, in the farm, if you find out you're wasting a lot of money while you're doing the monitoring on fuel, and if you did all the things that you needed to do in the beginning of the day with the tractor, you would cut down on fuel costs. Or if you use only one type of fuel, if you guys want all the diesel and away from gasoline, that's the kind of stuff that you make, decisions you make that are informed by strategic monitoring. And it helps your management. Generating and sharing new knowledge. That's something that everyone's like, oh, okay, well, everything does that. So when you're doing evaluation, you may find out things that you weren't expecting. And sometimes you have an impact that you weren't expecting. So for instance, you may think that by teaching women in Guatemala basic household budgeting, all you're teaching them how to do is how to spend their money. But in fact, you'll find that when you go 5 years later and you interview those women, these women may be more successful than other women in their community, and you'll find that you have empowered these women. And that will be an impact that you were not expecting. So then you can start doing gender studies about knowledge that you were expecting, because you had an unexpected result from your work. And so that's always really exciting. Capacity building, this is the part, the component that I'm the most interested in. A lot of times evaluators are Westerners. They get paid a lot of money by funders to go to other countries and to show up at your farm project and tell you how successful or how unsuccessful you've been. And it's very scary. And that's how a lot of evaluation is presented. I'm the funder, and I want to know if you're spending my money correctly. And that isn't what it should be about. It should be about generating knowledge, and it should be about capacity building. So the farm workers should learn from these evaluators how to do it themselves, so that they can continuously evaluate themselves, and the next time they want to take this farm project and they want to take it to the next community college, they're going to have a better project because they have been able to do it for themselves. And it shouldn't just be about how you spend someone else's money. It should be about how to increase impact and effectiveness. So that's it's kind of a philosophical thing. So this is one of the things. It's kind of our shtick. And then motivating stakeholders. I'm at S.I.T, so I'm really into participatory approaches. So when I was in the field, we did a very, very participatory style of evaluation. In fact, I'm really unfamiliar with the type of evaluation where it's just 3 people come into a country and they're like, okay, we're here for 3 weeks, we're going to find out what you guys did. I'm much more familiar with the kind where you take stakeholders from each group, you get together, you plan, you decide at the beginning of the project how you're going to evaluate it 5 years later at the end of the project. That's kind of the stuff that I've been more familiar with. So. And then ensuring accountability. That is our least favorite part of it, but it's probably the most important part. And that is why it's in the proposal. Because if you're proposing this to somebody to ask for money or ask for permission, this is the part they're going to want to know. Especially the people you're asking for money. This is the thing they're going to want. Well, how are you going to know? So what? You know what you want to do, but how are we going to be sure you did it with a lot of money? And this is kind of build on that. These are the two different things. You'll hear this a lot. Evaluation provides information about rationale or justification and a clear theory of change. So you're like, well, we know if we know that if we build latrines, the water situation will improve because we'll have all of our waste contained. Or we know if we build a water system, people will drink clean water, but you don't actually know that. You don't actually know that is true. So one organization that is a good example of this in my mind is Teach for America. Does everyone know what Teach for America is? Mm-hmm. Teach for America is an American organization, and their mission is to eradicate educational inequity. And I'm not ragging on Teach for America. I just want to go ahead and say I'm not naysaying on Teach for America. My sister is actually a Teach for America volunteer. But, so we argue about this a lot when we're at dinner. But, so, Teach for America wants to eradicate educational inequity in United States places. So they work on Native American reservations, they work in under-resourced communities in rural South and in urban communities that are considered under-resourced. And they say that the reason they're under-resourced is because they don't have trained teachers. And if they had good teachers, then it wouldn't matter, the students would do better. And so there's a teacher shortage in the country. And so what they've done is they've gone across the United States and they've heavily recruited the top percentage of all students. And they're very, very selective of who they select. And they take the top graduates from the United States, people who are on track to be lawyers and doctors and all these fancy people, and they say, okay, go and teach in this public school in the Atlantic-Fulton County system, which is where I'm from, and teach there, and you will find that by having this 2-year experience of being a teacher there, you will like help the community because they'll have a trained teacher. And then you will, when you go on to be the lawyer or the doctor that you want it to be, you'll always have that experience in your mind, and you'll be more civically minded towards your community. That's the philosophy. But the problem is, that's their theory of change, is they're going to supply teachers to eradicate educational inequity. So does anyone see the problem with taking people who weren't on track to be teachers for 2 years?
How can you say they're trained?
Right. They went. My sister got a degree in international affairs at the Georgia Tech, an engineering school, and now she teaches earth science in Brooklyn. And she is not going to teach earth science next year. I can tell you that right now. She does not like it. She does not like it at all. It's hard. She did not go to teacher education school, so she does not have classroom management techniques. And it's not the students. It's her. Like, it's not that her students are so bad. Like, we went to a high school that's just like the one she teaches in. Is that she doesn't know how to manage a classroom because she is not a trained teacher. And she knows, and she and all of the colleagues that she's going to Teach for America with, they are out of there after they do their 2 years of service. It's on their resume. They have done what they're going to do. She is going to law school. Like, that is that. So while their mission is admirable, and I really think their mission is the Wendy Kopp, the person who started Teach for America, is amazing. She started it when she was in her 20s. She's an inspiration, but the theory of change is actually a little bit problematic because I'm not sure that educational inequity is eradicated by putting a Band-Aid on a teacher shortage problem. So that's kind of the thing. That's one of the things that we do. That's what the strategic part of evaluation can do. So it's kind of disheartening at the end of your project. Someone's like, oh, good try, but actually you haven't solved the problem. You've just kind of been Band-Aid the whole time. Other thing is operations. This is really straightforward. Effectiveness and efficiency, stakeholder satisfaction. Those are often surveys. How you spent your money. Did you spend your money the most efficiently? Let's say we're both running an HIV/AIDS education outreach project. I spend $5 million. I train 5 people. You spend $2 million. You train 3,000. That happens, and that's what we learn about. And then the last thing is alternative best practices and lessons learned. So when you make projects, you look at projects like the ones you're interested in, and you oftentimes will mimic them. So any questions about the types of information we can learn? Okay. These are the 5 big ones. I just kind of went over them, but oftentimes if you're an evaluator, they'll come in, like when I got hired here, they said, Annalisa, we want you to do an effectiveness. Like they said, we want you to do an effectiveness evaluation. They'll say, we want you to do an efficiency evaluation. We want you to do an impact evaluation. Sometimes they'll say, we want you to do all 5. It just depends. Like, they will hire you. The World Bank may say, okay, we want you to go in and we want you to do impact and sustainability, and that's it. Like, that's all we're curious about. We want to know, did it have the impact we desired, and it's sustainable to keep doing this work in the Sudan? Like, that's what they want to know. They don't care if it's efficient. They don't care if it's intermediate effective. They want to know. And so these are the ways we break it up, and there are different strategies for all of them. Okay, so that's kind of...
you recall when you did your needs assessment that you ran into some of the similar literature associated with this, and then also sort of strategies, how you're going to calculate what strategy you're going to do, the force field, a review of resources, and then there was a third one that was called EC, remember, evaluation criteria. Even on the front end of all this, and these are the very categories that started showing up as you were thinking about your strategy.
Right.
And planning.
So it's good in the beginning of a project that you're saying to know which one you're going to want to do. In the beginning, you should actually you should maybe try to do all of them. But it's really in the end when they say, well, we don't have enough data to do an impact survey, we can maybe do an efficiency survey. So that's, okay. So here's something that you have to know a lot about to be successful in planning a monitoring evaluation plan, and it's the hierarchy, which I think you guys have talked about. I think you had all talked about it in class. If you're with project plan. So that's your goal, your purpose, your output, and your activities. And I wanted to give you this handout. It came from a CARE packet. It came from a CARE workbook because it just to emphasize that this is language that is used really interchangeably, and it's often very, very confusing. So particularly on this page, I think it's your first page, you see that CARE uses a certain type of language. And then under that, all of these other development organizations use completely different language for the same exact thing. They mean the same exact thing, but they use completely different language. I mean, and the problem is, it's not completely different. It's not like they say apples, oranges, pineapples. It's like they use the same 3 words completely differently, and that's what's so confusing. So CARE has gone through and made this diagram that shows you all the different ways. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because mostly they've only put this for funders. They've only really put giant funding agencies over here on the vertical. So it tells you if you're applying for USAID money and you have a proposal, you do not need to be using, S.I.T, Canadian language. You want to be using American language. If you're applying for, for funding from Denmark, use Denmark's language. That's the point of this entire thing. So, for instance, last year I took development management with Samdani Fakir, a man who'd worked at BRAC for a really long time. And we learned the classical logic framework that's on here on one of these pages. And then people who took it with Jim Levinson learned more of the CARE, the USAID, because that's where his background was. So I think they give you these to kind of give you a reference, and then they kind of give you the breakdown. So that this is a useful tool. I use it all the time when I'm trying to figure out what different people are saying. So when you're doing monitoring, when you're writing your monitoring plan, this is what you're monitoring. You're only monitoring your inputs, your activities, and your outputs. Monitoring always covers the bottom part. That's called the first level of evaluation or assessment. You're actually, like I said, tracking your inputs. You're tracking your outputs to see if you did the activities that you had planned on doing in your project. So if you look at this guy with the funny little men on it, when you do monitoring, you monitor these 3 boxes. And you do that through the course of the entire project. And then when you evaluate, you only evaluate the last 2. So this is kind of monitoring, and then the last 2 are evaluation. So that's kind of how we divide them up. And let me give you an example of why you have to do both. So I was working in Belize for a completely different consultant agency doing monitoring and evaluation. And a rural project came in 3 years after they were done with their project. Their project had been done for years. And they said, we went around the most rural part of Belize, and we built 2 latrines in some communities that had latrines and water systems in communities that had really, really, really big problems and incidences with diarrhea-related illnesses. And so they said, we wanted them to be drinking clean water and containing their waste, and that was their whole theory of change. So they went in and they didn't do any training. They just built these latrines and water systems, and the community helped, and the community was into it, and the community understood that this was a very helpful initiative. All of the communities, and they said, so we know that you all have been working and living here for a long time, and you have really good rapport with the community. Will you help us do our evaluation and come in? And they had monitored all of this stuff, so they had all these maps that were really detailed, and they had the exact location where they planned on building the latrine. They had the exact location where they actually built the latrine. They had the communities. They had all the communities mapped out. It was the most detailed map I'd ever seen of this area of Belize, because it's mostly rural, indigenous communities. And they had, so I was like, well, yeah, this will be really easy. I'll just go out there and see if the latrines are there and see if people are pooping in them. Like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to go out and check latrines and water systems. So I go out there, and the first place we go, because we're doing an effectiveness and impact, is I talk to the health post worker. I said, have the incidences of diarrhea-related illnesses reduced? Hands down, every community, no. Really? Like, seriously? Like, the lady's like, no, actually the populations have gotten bigger, the families have gotten bigger, the incident rate has actually gotten higher in some of these communities. That doesn't make any sense at all. Like, these people built a lot of latrines, and they monitored it the entire way. And you're like, I've got this map, I see a water system here, like, I don't, like, why do they still have diarrhea? And I went to the communities, and we started doing focus groups with women, children, and men, and it turned out that for the women, they didn't want to get their water from the water well, because a lot of them in these indigenous communities spent time together as women at the water source. So they would walk there together every day, they would collect their water there together every day, and they would talk about really important stuff. And if you started going to the water source, you would be left out of that. And that was a very political decision. And so in that focus group, we found out that the water source, and they were the only ones who collected water, women and children. So, you know, like, that was that. Like, that, they were not interested in that. And then for the men were, for the latrines, they never used the latrines one single time. Like, you could see that. I actually went to one community, opened up a latrine at the elementary school, and it was full of corn. And I was like, oh no, this is the exact opposite. They filled up all the holes in one of the communities, so that it was just a shelf. It was just a really dry, safe place to keep food. It was the perfect place. It was small. They couldn't overstore there. It was by the school where they had the feeding program. It was perfect. And they said, you know, culturally we don't like to use latrines. We're not going to do it. And they said that. And the thing is, nobody ever trained them about why they actually built the latrine. Nobody ever trained them about why they should use the water source. So they had done all the monitoring, but they never actually asked people about what they wanted or how to change. It is a cultural thing, but you know, you don't want everyone to be sick from diarrhea at the same time. So there wasn't enough investigation. So if you have monitoring and evaluation in the project design part where you are right now, it tells the funder in your community that you're really thinking your project through. You're not just going to do something because you think it's right. You're going to do something because of something that you've gathered, information that you've gathered. So that's just an example of how you can be doing monitoring, and then you get to the end of it, and you still need to be doing the evaluation, because just counting in latrines is not enough. You know, so I mean, if you look at it here, you can come to this school, and you can be like, well, I don't understand why we have some of the stuff that we have, because we don't use it the way that it was intended on using. Sometimes they don't ask faculty members, like, do you really need all of this equipment? They just purchase it because other schools have. I don't know. That's what I've noticed here. So this is your project cycle. This is just a really simple. You know, you're in the design project right now, the design phase. Excuse me. And then you'll implement and you'll monitor, like, you know, how many latrines did you build, and then you'll assess and you'll evaluate at the very end of your project. If you have a 3-year farm cycle, at the end of the farm cycle, you'll say, okay, this is the impact evaluation we're going to do. You'll report, which is really important, and then you'll revise your project to re-implement it and to reapply for funding. So let's say your farm might be a good example. Catherine has been working on the farm for a little over a year. So she's written a proposal, she's done things. You might be actually revising a proposal that she's already written, or writing a proposal on work that's already being done. It's important that you show prospective funders that you've learned from any, not mistakes, but challenges or situations that have come across that you would actually like to, that you now know because of Catherine's work, and how you can learn from that. So that's why we have revise, and it's a continuous cycle. The farm could go on forever, right? But it's always going to go through this exact cycle. Just to show you, this is actually the World Bank funding cycle. I'm not actually a really big fan of the World Bank, but that's where a lot of money comes from. So I took out a whole bunch of extra information just to show you that they actually already tell you you're going to be monitoring, and they tell you you're going to be evaluating before you even write your project plan. So this is just kind of like on their website. They have information about the kinds of projects that they're willing to fund, the kind of money they give to governments, and what they expect governments to be doing with it. And they tell you right off the bat, you will be implementing and monitoring at the same time, and at the completion you will evaluate. There's no question about it for these big funders. That's mandatory, and it shouldn't really. That's just kind of how it is. Any questions about that? Okay. Yeah.
But don't you think it's important as you implement that you also monitor just to make sure that if there are any holes, you can fix them as you go along?
Right, and a lot of plans, a lot of really good plans will actually schedule times for, like, for instance, the formative evaluation. So they say, let's say you're doing a 5-year teacher training plan. After the second academic year, you may actually do an evaluation to see how all the monitoring data adds up and do some interviews, and you may find, like, okay, the teachers really love coming to our workshops. They're really getting a lot out of it, but the problem is we're scheduling them during the grading period. So if we moved all of our teacher training to holidays, that is a mistake, lesson learned, generated new knowledge, do not move it near the holiday. But if you move it to a time where, you know, you go to their local manager of their school and say, this is really important, could you give the teacher 2 days off, you know, and do something else with the kids, or I don't know, something, and then give us time to do the training when they're scheduled to be working, or something like that. So it is really important for that. So at the beginning, when you're, right now, what you're doing, you have to determine your scope and purpose. So are you going to do all 5 areas of evaluation? Efficiency, effectiveness, impact, sustainability, and relevance? Are you going to do? Are you really going to be able to do all of those, or are you really just going to do some of it? I mean, when I made my plan last year for development management 2, I remember I was like, oh, of course, I'll do all 5, and blah, 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 and then some Donnie's like, here, my teacher got it, and it's like, you're kidding me, right? How are you going to be able to do all of this stuff? And I was like, oh, I thought you had to do all 5, and he was like, no, be realistic. And you have to be realistic because you have to think about what resources you have. And then determine your scope. Like, how much do you need to know to answer your questions? So, like, how much do you need to know about how much money you spend? How much do you need to know about how many people ate from the farm stand? Like, what is the scope of the work that you need to figure out? This is it. Like, this is basically, yeah.
With these bigger donors like the World Bank, do they give you like a specific plan on how you're going to monitor and evaluation, like the process that you're going to go through, or do you have a little bit of freedom to?
Here is my understanding with, like, USAID is probably a better example because they'll directly fund projects. USAID, what they'll do is they will say, okay, here's what's going to happen. You had your 6-year project. We're going to do a formative evaluation here at the 3-year mark, and we're going to come back at the 6-year mark, and we're going to do summative evaluation, and then at the 2-year mark, after you're done 2 years later, we're going to do another evaluation to see how, if it's really working. So they'll tell you that's what they're going to do. They're going to hire somebody to come. They're going to hire Jim Levinson to come in and do that for you. And they'll say, but if you want to get the money from the get-go, you need to actually, as part of your project, you need to be monitoring the entire time, and you need to be evaluating the entire time. Because before they hire Jim Levinson to come in, he's going to expect. He's only going to be there for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So he's going to expect to have documents from your organization that documents all the work that you've been doing. So, so that's kind of how it is. So when you're planning, some places will, like you're asking, will want a form. They'll want like a specific form, which I just passed out one I think that CARE uses. Yeah, this is from a CARE worksheet. And then they're going to want to know the different levels, the evaluation questions, and they're going to want to know like how you're going to know the answer to these questions. That's your indicator, and then that you know what kind of information is going to answer those questions. So I'll show you examples of that from my work here when we get to that part. This is a really important part of the planning process because this is where you decide. Let's say, for instance, you are doing HIV/AIDS education. So you want to reduce the amount of transmission of HIV/AIDS in Brattleboro. So you say, what we're going to do is we're going to distribute condoms, and we're going to do workshops for high-risk populations in Brattleboro. So what you do is you say, okay, here's how many condoms we distributed, all this stuff. So the question that we're going to ask is probably going to be, to what extent did our intervention help the target population versus non-target population? So you're going to probably try to find a town that's exactly like Brattleboro, and you're going to compare, you're going to track over time the differences in their HIV transmission rate. Now, we're going to do training for 3 years, and then do you think that the transmission rate reduces in 3 years? No, it doesn't, because you've got maybe 15-year-old you're training, and they could still transmit. They're probably not going to be fully sexually active until they're older. So what you really want to know is over time. So you, as a program, can't really control how many people transmit HIV/AIDS. So you can really only control how you train them. So there's no way to directly impact that. But you do want to see that over time that it reduces. So if it reduces in the place where you are doing the training, and it does not reduce in a place where the training did not exist, you can do a differences of differences analysis, and you can say, there could be some causality to that. But that's getting really, really into it. But this is the point where you determine what kind of baseline information you'll need. So, for instance, if you're doing work in Uganda, what kind of baseline population do you need from your target population and from your control group? And then what are you collecting? So, I don't really want to get too into stuff about control groups and baseline. That's a lot of really boring and picky information. So once you decide what you need, is how are you going to collect it? So this is the third step. How are you going to collect it? A lot of the stuff you probably talked about in practitioner inquiry. Yay, practitioner inquiry. So this is the kind of, on a bigger scale, it's kind of the same thing as an inquiry. That's what an evaluation is. So you talk about surveys or questionnaires, which some people use the term interchangeably. Interviews, expert interviews, or just target population interviews. Focus groups. Everyone know those are the 3 things I know in PI that I feel that we all talk about. Observations. So I went and I opened latrine doors, and corn fell out. There is no poop to be found in the latrine. So those are one thing. Literature reviews, mapping. How many of you ever participated in community mapping? Okay, so what kind of stuff did you do?
It was part of an internship with an NGO, and there's a group of us who went around with the village chief, and he showed us, this is where people go to the bathroom, this is where people get water, this is where this group of people live.
Right, so a lot of times when you do community mapping, a lot of times what you can do, when you're in this phase, the design phase, is you'll say, draw a picture of your community now. And then, sometimes the community of your sueños, the community of your dreams. So when I worked in Central America, we'd say to the teams, this is show me what your community looks like today. And then the next day we go back and now we want you to draw what you want your community to look like in 5 years. And then we would do that, and then they would say, okay, it looks like all of you want the community to be cleaner. So why don't we do a project about littering, or something like that. Or it looks like all of you want to have jobs. So why don't we do a project on, economic opportunities. And so that's kind of like community mapping. It's a way to get people's input on what they want their community to look like, or what they think their community looks like. Review available data. This is what I was talking about with you, Billy, with when an evaluator comes in, they're going to want to get as much of your records as possible that you've been keeping for monitoring and evaluation. And so that's why big funders want you to be doing it yourself, so that when they pay somebody, they don't have to pay somebody for longer than they have to come in and do it. The Delphi technique. Has anyone ever used Delphi technique? I've only used it once, and I was not a participant, and I was really glad. But it's where you send out information, like a question on writing, everyone writes down their answer, and then someone takes all of it and aggregates it, and then says, okay, from reading this, I am to understand that you all believe this, and then you send it out again, and people correct that statement, or they correct anything that was aggregated, or they respond because you're each individually getting the survey. They respond to what other people say, and it's okay, after reading your responses to each other and the statement, I am to believe that you say this. and then you aggregate again, and then usually you tell them we're going to do it in 4 rounds. So if you don't get your response in 4 rounds, like that's it. So you'll find when you do the Delphi technique though, if you tell them in the front that you're doing 3 rounds, they will all like be really polite in the first round, and then they'll start like jabbing a little to each other. Because it's anonymous, so you don't know who's saying what, and they'll kind of be like, well, participant 2 has forgotten, you know, and then in the third round it's like, well, I think it's completely irresponsible to use money, and it's like, okay, that's not really. But it's a way to get candid responses, and then a citizen report card. I think citizen report card was made up in Bangladesh, where all things come from for development. But Bangladesh, where they just go around and it's just like a little kid's report card, you know, like math, science, whatever. It's like, you know, street tools, like what, you know, and people just grade them. And of course, there's all the subjectivity and stuff, but it's a way to get feedback. So those are some data collection methods. Can you guys think of any other? Okay, so those are really the only ones I could think of when I was making this PowerPoint yesterday. So, and then the last 2 parts when you're planning are probably the 2 most important parts. The fourth one is planning critical reflection processes and events. So you see in this little cartoon right here, you've got the community and they're talking about what they think they need. And then you've got the council members who are up here talking about what they think they need. And this lady's saying, oh, my uncle's in the business of like building roads. So like, and you know, it's not always that corrupt, but sometimes there's always people who have agendas. So it's about participate. I mean, this is obviously my own thing, but like, it's about getting everybody involved in the reflection process. So in the beginning, you want to say like, we're going to involve our stakeholders in designing the monitoring and evaluation plan. And then you want to plan different points where it makes sense to involve them in monitoring and involve them in evaluating. Because they're the only ones who can really tell you if they know how to use a condom or not. So that's one thing. And the last thing is plan for reporting. How are you going to tell your stakeholders that we were successful? Not just that you were successful, but the whole community. Like, how are we going to tell them that this is successful? So have any of you ever like read a report about something like this? For all of you who are, you know, U.S. citizens, we're supposed to get that from our media, but the media might not be the best place to get it. But we have a Department of Government Oversight. My friend works there, one of my nerdy monitoring and evaluation friends, and he actually does this exact thing for government initiatives. And you can always go online and find out how effective the different initiatives that we have been. We do it a lot for schools. That's where you hear the most. That's where you hear the most about. Schools really get ragged on because it's really, really easy to collect data in schools about students. You know, you know exactly how many. You can track them very easily. So you just write a report. You send it to your funder. You send it to your people that you worked with. If you were the Red Cross and you were distributing condoms, you may send it to, you know, the YWCA where you distributed the condoms. You may send it to the Ministry of Health, you know, whoever else. But that's not really who's important. Like, who's actually important is the people that you're helping. So when you're planning for reporting, oftentimes you need to plan 2 different types of reporting. One for one for different group, different stakeholders have different reporting. I've seen plays. Communities that where the program managers have put on plays for the children, you know, to explain, like, we did a hand washing thing with kids about, you know, to wash their hands, and we did a play in the beginning about the problem, and then we did a hand washing intervention for 6 months, and then when we had the kids do a play at the end about like why they like to wash their hands, and then we told them like how things had gotten better because they've been washing their hands. And had there been electricity in that village, we would have videotaped it. But Annalisa did not charge battery to that camera, so it was not recorded. And so there's different types of way of reporting. It's like my favorite part. It's my favorite part of evaluation is like telling the most important stakeholders, you know, if we've actually been helpful to them or not, and how we plan to be more helpful in the future. So that's all part of your plan. So, like I said, I gave you this chart. This is I see this like all the time in project proposals, a chart like this. Sometimes they prefer narratives. Sometimes they just want a Gantt chart that's like, we're going to monitor this, this, and this. This is where we're going to do it. This is who's going to do it. It's usually 2 pages max for all of this information. Like, I've never seen in a proposal more than 2 or 3 pages for a monitoring evaluation plan. That is like a lot of information in the front. They want to know more about other stuff. They're not that worried about this at this point. They're not going to worry about this until it's like 5 years later and they want to know where your money went. So you actually have to do this process twice. You have to vet your monitoring evaluation twice. So you do this once when you actually write your proposal, and then when you get your money, yay, everybody got funded, fully funded, with no considerations to be made. You know, you get your money, then you actually have to write a real plan, and that's a totally different thing that involves big, giant. That's what I do here. Is I like write an actual plan where it's very detailed. It has action plans. It has work plans. Lots of detail, and it has terms of reference and things like that. So that you have to do this twice. Once very kind of scantily for your proposal, but give it some thought, because if you put it in your proposal and then you don't do it, that also implies how you manage, and they may not like you as a manager because of that. Typically, we like to say that you should 7 to 10% of your funding should go to monitoring and evaluation for your budget. That's a lot of your budget, but if you think of it, if you're going to be having, most people only do 5 to 6%, I'll be really honest, but if you're going to use your own staff to do monitoring and your own staff to do midpoint evaluations, if you're going to ask stakeholders to come in and do community mapping, if you're going to ask people to do all these things with you, you need to plan it into your budget. Like transportation, venue rentals, you're going to be paying your staff members, and you don't want to take that out of your program staff time. Like, so you're gonna have program staff salaries, and then you're gonna have like an extra salary for when they do monitoring and evaluation work. You don't want that to come out of the same part of your budget, because it could take them time. You want it to be separate. You want it to be important. You want it to look important on your budget line. You want it to look important to your funder. You want it to look important to your stakeholders, because it is. So it's important. That's kind of like one of the technical things. So this is what I do here. We have 4 areas. We don't do all 5, or I've decided that I'm not capable of doing all 5. The way the school is set up, we're under a big umbrella called S.I.T, but we're the Graduate Institute. So starting from the bottom, we kind of want to know how relevant and effective the degrees are that we offer. So these are all the degrees, not including certificates that S.I.T offers. So this is the Oman project, this is the summer MAT project, and the academic year MAT project. And then these are all of our degrees, for PIM degrees that we're more familiar with. So on the degree level, we want to know, is the degree relevant? Like if you come here and you learn about conflict transformation, are you actually learning about things that conflict transformation practitioners need to know about? Like, do we know if it's relevant? And then, do we know if it's effective? So if you come here and you learn about IE, are we effectively teaching you IE stuff? Not just like, are we teaching you the right stuff, because that's the relevancy piece. Are we actually effectively doing our 9 months on campus and our off-campus phase? So those are the 2 questions we ask on the degree level. Then we move up to the actual PIM, MAT, and Oman level, and we're asking, are these programs that we're running under these programs, are they having the impact that we want? PIM has a mission, MAT has a mission, Oman has a mission, which is actually really similar to PIM's, but they have their own missions, and are they actually meeting the impact? Do we have the development and practitioners? Do we have culturally sensitive and aware people that we wanted to send out to the world? Do they exist? So we do that. We have ways to measure our impact, and then up here, is it sustainable for the Graduate Institute to continue to run these programs? So that's kind of how which one did I leave off? Which of the 5 did I not put in there? And why? Why do you think I left it off?
Efficiency?
Yeah, efficiency. Because even if we go through, like, let's say, Rich and the IE people go through and they do a really good job, and they do this and an efficiency in the degree area. They actually don't have that much control of their resources. And even on the PIM level with the deans, like, they don't actually have that much control over their resources. And even here, we have control, but it's not the way that you as a program manager on the farm have control. So it could just be frustrating to send the faculty jumping through all of these hoops, when in the end, when we say like, oh, you've been very, very efficient, but we're still going to spend the money completely differently than what you all think we should do. Like, that doesn't make sense to do that to your stakeholders or to the students. Like that would be brutal. Don't do that to people. If they can't impact your decision making, then don't follow them. So, this is, you don't have to like really read this whole thing. I just wanted to show you how I feel about this one chart. For the conflict transformation degree program, the first question we're asking is it relevant? We will know it's relevant if people, one way we will know if people continue to, the way you write, this is an example of how to write an indicator. The number of students between 2010 and 2014 who enrolled in CT program. And so we have a target of 95 students. We average about 12 to 18 students in the program a year. We're hoping to like make the program relevant. Another indicator of is it relevant is of the students who have enrolled and completed the practicum phase since 2010, the percentage using degree competencies during their practicum phase. So CT students have competencies about mediation, facilitation. They have competencies about using frameworks to break down conflicts. So we're going to send this alumni survey, because that's what we're hoping to get this out to all these people who are CT students. And they're going to tell you, like, no, actually, we don't use any of that. Like, we needed more of this. Or we use that every single day. We wish we would have learned more of the stuff. And then down here, we have by 2014, the percentage of CT alum working professionally in CT-related positions. So they came here, they loved the degree, they loved everything they learned, they wanted to be CT, they wanted to use CT skills in their profession, and they could not get a job. They could not find a job to save their lives in the CT field. Like, that's just like a worst case scenario. So we'll go and we'll say how many people use the competencies in their daily work. They may be a teacher in Brooklyn, like my sister, and they may use conflict transformation skills every single day. But they're a teacher, but they consider that successful still because she's still using her degree in some way.